Okay, well, again, welcome to our sustainability, showcase. Certainly this is not the only session you'll be hearing, about, sustainability, but it's my pleasure to introduce Danielle, who has spoken at Guelph, in the past, and we've always loved our partnership, with the Canada Post, like a team in general. So I'm going to let her kind of, talk, through some interesting, research, and we're going to have a little chat afterwards. So Danielle, please take it away.
Thanks, Jim. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Danielle Dwyer, and I'm the General Manager of Brand Strategy and Marketing at Canada Post. So for those of you not familiar with Canada Post, we are Canada's postal delivery system. We are also the leading e-commerce delivery provider of Canadian retail. We're also the preferred delivery provider for Canadian online shoppers. Jim will keep me honest here, but I think we've actually been a part of the Guelph event for, I think, 6 years, longer than that. And typically what we do is, one of the things that we do at Canada Post is we spend a lot of time studying the Canadian market, both from the perspective of what's keeping merchants awake at night, but also what are the evolving, changing preferences and behaviors of Canadian consumers that the retail industry really needs to know more about. And so we typically share insights broadly with the group at Guelph. But this session, we're going to actually focus on an increasingly important area of focus for both businesses and consumers in a really focused way for the session today. What do you do when the world feels a little bit like it's been turned upside down for a pretty elongated window of time, whether that's pandemic or economy or world events? Well, from a Canadian consumer perspective, you take the time to reconnect with your values. You take a moment to reevaluate what's important to you, what matters most, to you as an individual. And what we saw coming out of this period of time was what we're calling the emergence of the conscious Canadian consumer. They have flagged some really important priorities to them. And top of that list being ESG broadly, but sustainability very specifically. So just for the purpose of alignment, the way that we define sustainability is ensuring that your needs are fulfilled without impacting, the future generations' ability to have their needs fulfilled. So what we do, the way in which we take a pulse of what's happening in the Canadian market is we do an annual piece of research really sizable on the Canadian market. We talk to thousands of Canadian consumers. And we go deep into their behaviors and their preferences and things that are emerging that are actually having a really big impact on the decisions they're making and in their relationships with the businesses and the brands that they choose to do business with. 4 things emerged in this year's research, so conducted in May of this year. 4 things emerged on the sustainability front that I think it's really important for retailers to be aware of. The first is sustainability is having a fundamental change in how Canadians live their day-to-day lives, the things that they do in their households. It's also changing their expectations of businesses in terms of their expectations for the level of investment and focus in this area. They want to know more. They want to know more about how businesses are prioritizing sustainability in their own practices. And we also have a very good line of sight to what, from a sustainability practice and priority perspective, are the things that Canadian consumers value the most. So on the first point, what I can tell you is Canadians are taking action on their own, whether that's sustainable practices in their home, whether that's in use of increased use of sustainable products. There is an opportunity for you as a retailer to understand what that actually looks like from a couple of perspectives. The first is, how do you mirror the things that Canadians are doing, the practices that the behaviors that they've adopted themselves? How do you mirror that as a business looking to establish a stronger relationship with your current customers, and as an opportunity to reach across and build new relationships with your next best customers? And then really even more so, taking it one step further, how do you integrate yourself into these behaviors to become even more relevant and to really bond with the Canadian consumer over common and shared goals? There are still, not surprisingly, barriers that Canadian consumers, let's be realistic, barriers that Canadian consumers face to really embracing sustainability in a more fulsome, deeper fashion, and they're not going to be surprising. There are things like cost, information, and wanting to know more to make sure that they're allocating the right effort against the right things, and effort in general. What's really interesting is that actually it's varied by audience. The different generations say that there are different barriers to adoption of sustainable practices. Won't be surprising to know that some of the younger generations, cost is the number one barrier to adopting more sustainability in their day-to-day, sustainability behaviors in their day-to-day. But for boomers and Gen X, who we don't talk about nearly enough, they are a lot more concerned about making sure that the efforts that they put forward from a sustainability perspective are going to be the right ones. They want to be more informed. That's actually a really interesting opportunity for brands to connect in a more meaningful way with those particular groups. Significant in their purchasing power currently is to convey what you're doing and help actually become a part of their own learning journey. But certainly and without question, one of the things that was very clear in this year's eShopper research is that there is growing expectations for businesses broadly, and growing expectations for significant and meaningful commitments and investments to be made on the sustainability front. Consumers want to know more about what you're doing from a sustainability practice and plan perspective. And when you tell them, they listen. The watch out, though, is that they are skeptical. They are listening, but they are skeptical in terms of what brands are saying they're doing and why on this front. And this actually becomes even more pronounced when you look at younger generations. 67% of Gen Zs say they question a brand's integrity as it relates to their investment and their priority in sustainability. They feel that there is a high likelihood that the investment is related to brand building and not necessarily core to the purpose of that brand. So it's really important to be extremely thoughtful about how you engage consumers, how frequently and in what areas about your sustainability practices as an organization, as a business. So what matters most to Canadians is broad, but very varied by audience. So boomers and Gen X's, they want to be able to touch, they want to be able to see, they want to be able to experience sustainable practices from the brands and the businesses that they choose to do business with. Gen Zs, on the other hand, have a bit more appetite to understand more about those intangible sustainability strategies that businesses and brands have put into place. Things like ED&I, things like carbon emission reductions. They're much more engaged on what brands are doing on those fronts. I think an important takeaway for merchants who are thinking about, who have either established their own plan, you're in early stages of developing your own sustainability plan, is just knowing exactly how it aligns to not just Canadians broadly, but the target audiences that matter most to you as a brand or a business. We have a team of individuals here with us at our booth who have a deep level of knowledge about the research and actually how what the priorities look like across key target audiences. Some of those will be more relevant to you as a business, and they would be happy to talk to you about generations, what they care about, and even regional aspects to what Canadians care about in the West Coast versus what's really top of mind for Canadians in the province of Quebec. So there's really depth of knowledge that helps guide your priorities. What should you be most focused on? And how does that align to what your customers care most about? Because businesses that do this well will reap reap the business benefit. There's a very notable direct business benefit to prioritizing sustainability as a business or brand. Interestingly enough, we also conduct a piece of research focused on business, which we also commissioned this year. We don't do it as frequently as our eShopper research, but what we asked businesses about their focus on sustainability. How deep are they going? How significantly are they investing? What was really interesting is 80% of the businesses that we targeted in our survey, thousands, said they are attributing, 80% say they attribute sustainability investments and plans to their e-commerce success. 21% said it was the greatest contributor more recently, it's become the greatest contributor to business performance and growth. Consumers are they're placing a value on a brand's investment in sustainability, and it can have a very direct business benefit to the brands that are making meaningful investments and are placing a meaningful focus in this area. So just a few tips to leave you with, but certainly we are happy to keep the conversation going about the sustainability focus of businesses operating in Canada, focusing on Canada, and the consumers that you're looking to target or build stronger relationships with in the Canadian market. Evaluate your plan. Evaluate your plan against what matters most to your target audience. Share your story. Consumers want to know. The watch out here is they're becoming less and less patient with your sustainability targets that stretch out to 2050. They really want to they want to understand your long-term sustainability plan. They want to see more action out of the brands that they do business with. And the last piece is you don't have to, and it's not here on the slide, but it's a really important one. Establishing the right sustainability plan for your business is a daunting, cross-functional, company-wide endeavor, which we all know. Anyone who's in it, you know. And it's a long game. So as you are laying the groundwork for your own sustainability goals and progress, don't forget your partners. Your partners can help you accomplish or accelerate your sustainability goals. Choosing the right partner who has a shared focus on this front can help you even make quicker short-term wins and short-term progress. And it's important because it's important that you're communicating, the impact you're having in very tangible ways, ongoing to your customers to keep them engaged and informed, and to be really credible about your commitment in the area of sustainability. And that's a wrap.
Thank you very much. Again, as always, we love, the research that Canada Post, does. Before we kind of talk a little more around, the research and what that means, for retailers and brands, I'd love to get just a quick kind of macro, commentary on the Canadian, market. Obviously, we've seen in many markets. We saw some of the data this morning in terms of the where Europe's gone through a very soft period. It's almost the rebound of store shopping after the big surge of e-commerce shopping during COVID. Canada experienced some extreme, growth in e-commerce during COVID. How has it been, recently? Has that growth sustained, essentially?
Yeah. So we were a little late to investment in e-com as a country. So our significant growth that you referred to, Jim, came a little bit later than other countries, which has presented an opportunity for brands that are looking at international expansion. And that growth is expected to continue. So I don't know if it was eMarketer shared this morning. So the way I would describe it is, it's a little bit of an anomaly. The COVID years, there's an asterisk because it was just the Wild West from an e-commerce perspective in terms of growth. We had a stabilization in 2022. We're starting to see a rebound because, of course, all retail channels were entirely open for business. We're starting to see some growth in 2023, and we're expecting to see more significant growth for 2024. I think eMarketer is predicting about 10% growth in e-commerce sales in the Canadian market. Canadians are really engaged in their international shopping, and I think that is, it's due to a lot of things that you've probably also talked about earlier today: product assortment, price, brand availability, all of those good things. We constantly complain about our ability to shop in the Canadian markets. It's, for any of you Canadians here, what especially in fashion, what I mean. So we have 50%, over 50% of Canadian consumers actively shop from and are very engaged with US brands. That is expected to increase, but not limited to. Canadians are really engaged. There's growing engagement with European brands as well, but there's a lot of opportunity to capitalize on what is expected to be continued growth in the Canadian market.
Very interesting, and yes, the Canadian cross-border shopping behavior has gone on, long before the internet. Even, I think I did, my first cross-border, study on that almost 30 years ago. Let's talk about some of this research again. Great to kind of see where the consumers, minds are at, but what does that mean, for retail best practices, right? I mean, how do you, if you so choose to be a sustainability leader, right? I mean, who do you think of? And I always think that benchmarking is important. So again, in the Canadian market, who should these people be again? Keeping an eye out, and what defines kind of leadership.
Yeah, I think retailers that are standing out are doing a few things and doing them well. So I would just call it I don't know if any of the brands are actually here today, but I really love how Guess is presenting in a very upfront fashion their sustainability commitments, their ED&I commitments, the progress they're making, the short-term gains they have established, while they are not taking their foot off the gas or focus off of the long-term goals as well from a sustainability perspective. It's very present in their digital environment. They've really integrated sustainability into their storytelling. It'll be sooner than later integrated into their manufacturing processes as well. But they're very transparent. And so I think they're a great example of how do you make sure that your consumers or your customers are really aware of all of the things that you're doing, and that you're getting full credit for it as a brand, and it's having an influence on your relationships. You've got other organizations like Clarins, who, and there are many others that are doing something very similar, where you're actually embedding sustainability in the shopping process. So you're making your way into sort of the shopping cart environment, and you are actually seeing sustainable shipping options presented to you as a consumer. That you're being presented with, so that you can take control over, sustainable delivery of whatever it is that you're purchasing or procuring from that merchant. So integrating it into the environment is such a fantastic way to put control in the hands of the consumer, but also demonstrate just how committed you are as a brand to sustainability across your entire value chain and process.
In the checkout, are you seeing both green shipping options being offered, but any packaging options?
Yeah, what was really interesting is we are seeing the rise of packaging options from a consumer perspective. They said they would be willing to wait for delivery. So speed is becoming less. Speed will always be a factor. Many of us know that here. But speed becomes less of a factor when you start to ask questions like, do you want it to be sustainable? And then the consumer is, more than 50% of consumers are saying, I'd actually wait for something if it actually had, was lighter on the earth, as it's being delivered to me. Sustainable packaging is another. Or not sustainable packaging per se, but I would consolidate orders, wait a little bit longer if it meant that there would be reduced packaging and reduced waste as a result of waiting a few days to receive multiple items that you might be purchasing from a merchant.
Is that part of this latest Canada Post green processing, facility? Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I had mentioned at the end, look, partners can help you make gains. Partners can help you make progress. We are looking to our own partners to help us make progress on our Scope 3 emissions, just like many retailers are as well. We are greening our operations so that we can become a better partner to the businesses that we serve, not just domestically, but internationally as well. We've made 2 significant investments this year. But again, it's demonstrating small gains while we are focused on long-term strategies. So some of these are longer-term strategies. So we introduced carbon neutral shipping this year to Canadians. It's a unique, in Canadian businesses, it's a unique product in market in terms of its broad-based offering. All of our ground services are now carbon neutral. And we've procured offsets to be able to allow for that, focusing on Indigenous projects in the Canadian market in particular. And this allows the businesses that we serve to be able to offer greener delivery options to their own customers and make them available in checkout so that there's an awareness of the work that they're doing in partnership with Canada Post. We've also introduced and opened the doors on the largest parcel processing facility of its kind in the country. It is, I wrote it down because my sustainability people have me well armed so that I am articulating all of this accurately. So it's the first net zero building of its kind in the country. It doesn't just consume energy, it actually produces it. And it's the largest industrial project of its kind to meet the Canadian Green Building standards for net zero buildings in the country. So it's not just about sustainability, it's also a really important hub in our e-commerce network and in our e-commerce infrastructure, and it's meant to ensure that we are a faster, stronger, and greener partner to the businesses that we serve. There's an ever-existing focus on electrifying our fleet to be able to reduce our own carbon emissions, our own Scope 1 and 2 emissions. We actually have 2 communities that are fully electric to date and more to come. We're doing things like focusing on renewable energy sources, especially in areas of the country that have more dirtier, problematic power grids. So as of January 1st, 2023, we had an agreement in the province of Alberta. We are now using 100% renewable energy. We're focused on Saskatchewan next, and we'll just continue to build on that as well. But ultimately, all of it is really about our own footprint, but it's also about helping the industry, achieve their own sustainability goals as well.
How much of this is kind of driven by regulatory change? I know that in work that we've done, we've seen, how much that drives, prioritization and sequencing of where you would kind of put your limited resources against it, right? Even at a municipality level, where the adjacent municipality may have totally, different regulations. What are are there regulatory issues that, the crowd here, should know about?
Yeah, and certainly I am probably not a deep subject matter expertise on this front, but what I will tell you is, there is an expectation. We are feeling the expectation, given who we are, and given our footprint in Canada being Canada's postal system, we feel the pressure of expectations from Canadians and Canadian businesses to do more. And that is exactly what has been that was the original driver behind our sustainability focus, to be frank. We transformed as a brand. Coming out of COVID, we made a commitment to Canadians that we would contribute to a stronger Canada, and environment and sustainability is one of the ways in which we're doing that. And so it's actually been the driver behind our sustainability plan. We're trying to get ahead of some of the regulation before it becomes a more problematic investment. And we're trying to take a leadership role in an area that we know is really important to our country and the businesses that we serve and the Canadians we serve.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Again, certainly I know there are deep subject matter experts on regulatory changes. So if anyone does need to, they can talk to some of the Canada Post team in more detail. Let's kind of talk briefly around some of the some of your advice like in the action slide was again, tailor the message, right? Don't talk about 2050. That's not what they want to hear. What is kind of resonating and seen as being authentic.
Yes, and I think you have to. The long-term plan is important. There's no question about it. You need to rally your organization around a plan. And we know that many of these investments, for any of you who are, in the thick of either developing or implementing your sustainability plan, it's complex. It's a complex, long game, and a long-term focus. And so it's important, I think, that you are shining a light on the short-term gains that you're making, so that you are proving to consumers, regardless of the country, that you mean what you say. It is actually the most credible way to bring about your sustainability plan. Small things matter. Small accomplishments matter, whether it's In our case, it was about securing renewable energy. It was about turning on depots and being able to talk about to the communities that we are a part of, how we are making a difference in our own footprint and why. And it would be the same for, any of you working through your own sustainability strategies. Constant dialogue with your customers about your commitment, constant reinforcement about your commitment and sustainability is the most credible way to demonstrate the level of investment you're placing on something really important. It also will help to strengthen the association between your brand and, and sustainability and environment. So I think continued conversation, because Canadians want to know. Canadians want to know. They're actively looking at, and this is only going to increase in its focus and its intensity within our market anyhow. So I would say keep the dialogue happening with your customers. They want to know.
And let's kind of wrap up on again, some of the business model discussions that we've been having, so far this morning, kind of looking at, how cross-border e-commerce, has been evolving, but certainly where, we've seen, this trend towards, again, staging inventory, and again, closer to the consumer. What does that mean in terms of, let's say an ambitious, brand coming from the U.S. or Europe, what kind of policies, should they be thinking of, to, again, really fit for the local Canadian market?
Yeah, and truly, there are subject matter experts at our booth area that are far stronger at this than I am, but I will share sort of my perspectives on it. Like there's significant market opportunity in the Canadian market. Consumers, we have a relatively stable economy. They are really engaged with international brands. There's opportunity there. And you might already be sensing that as a brand. Canadians may already be purchasing from you. And you'll see that in your own data and in your own, purchasing data. And at some point, when we work with retailers, they are realizing that there's probably a more substantial opportunity to be exploring there because Canadians are actually engaging with them. And then you start to think about how do you best serve them. At some point, when you realize the opportunity, is substantial, you're deciding as a brand on how to best serve them, both from an online shopping experience, but also in terms of a speed to be able to get your product into their hands. And so those are some of the things that you are evaluating as a brand. Some will be working with interliners, interliner partners who are able to transport their product over to Canada, consolidate and transport their product over to Canada. At some point, when the demand or the opportunity hits a certain point, you're considering, parking, to your point, Jim, really locating your product into Canada. It doesn't have to be your full inventory, it could be your top SKUs. That might be a better way around and a more efficient way to be sort of present and reaching the Canadian market. And until the time comes where you would like more of a physical presence here. But, e-com, there are different ways to do that versus just being physically present. E-com and the relationship that you can establish with Canadian consumers digitally, there's a strong opportunity there. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I mean, again, and I know there are, again, some experts that can certainly go even deeper, but I think it is important, in work, we've done where we've looked at market sizing opportunities for biodegradable, products, for example, and normally that 10-to-1 ratio of the Canadian population versus the U.S. is more like a 4-to-1 proposition, and the Canadian market being that much bigger proportionally. Yeah. I mean, so it is something that we see this manifesting in terms of kind of revenue opportunities. So again, don't underestimate again the power of a strong sustainability message in the Canadian market.
Yes, definitely. I mean, from where are you accessing your product when you're reaching a Canadian consumer, closer is better, obviously, from a sustainability perspective. It doesn't have to be your entire category; it can be your top SKUs. But work with your partners. So if you've got partners that offer sustainable delivery solutions, you can be presenting that to your Canadian shoppers, when they're engaging with you online as well. There are things that you can do to demonstrate your commitment to sustainability to a group that really cares a lot about it, being the Canadian consumer, as you're engaging with us.
Danielle, thank you very much again, and know that we've only scratched the surface in terms of the research that they've done. Please go talk to the Canada Post team if you're interested in further details. Quick housekeeping notes here. We're going to lunch right now. Please enjoy the networking time. Know that we have some of these small group peer meetup conversations happening. So again, please join some of those. Again, we just as always, continue the conversation off stage. So again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everyone.